Welcome and a late Merry Christmas for this year 2020. This is our last episode for the year 2020. At least if I'm able to upload this before the new year, but I think I am. So let's see this as an episode to close 2020 and start an hopefully different new year. Yeah, so hi Dennis, first of all.
Hello there.
Nearly forget you there. General Kenobi.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, so for this podcast today, we talked about it in the last one. We have something special in mind. We want to do a recap of this year and also give the student point of view again to see how this year was for a student that just started to get into science. And a bit about personal stuff I get also. So this is not an episode that is centered on something new to learn. We don't talk about geosciences. I mean, we talk about geosciences, but we not try to talk about specific topics today. We just kind of want to chat about the year. So if you're interested in that, you're invited to join in. Get a cup of tea, coffee, or any alcoholic drink, I guess.
Just as me, because I'm such a role model, I decided to drink the last mulled wine we had left, so maybe join
Mulled
the dark
wine,
side
yeah.
and pop open some beer or mulled wine, whatever your beverage of choice is.
I think I heard the name for mulled wine. Also the English word for that the first time in my life today. Oh, this can be the German word of the day. So mulled wine is Glühwein. Yeah, kind of not very special now when I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
Basically means
usually we save it for the main part, but there you go.
We'll find something better maybe.
So, but before we get into our ramblings about 2020, maybe just a bit of news to kick things off. Thomas, is there something new in your life in the world of planetary sciences?
Not really. I mean, of course, in the field of planetary sciences, I think a lot. But for me personally, not. I'm currently staying with my parents. I self-isolated a week before I got here. So my parents live in Bavaria, about 500 kilometers away from where I study. Yes, I self-isolated. I decided to take a very late train because there are less people on it, which was kind of a stupid decision because I realized that in Bavaria you currently have to be at home at 9 o'clock p.m. I didn't really think about that.
No.
Yeah, but there are certain scenarios where it's okay. And my case actually was in that it was described as it's okay. So, yeah. There are some things for university that I have to do. And otherwise, next year in 2021, there's the Lunar and Planetary Science Conference online this year. This conference is also something I want to talk about later. But yeah, so this is an online conference and you have to write abstracts, so small 2-page descriptions of your work to enter. And I did write one, and now I'm writing actually another one. One was based on my bachelor thesis, and the other one was based on the work I did in an internship at the DLR earlier this year. So actually kind of two. So I have also to do I have to prepare for that conference, and then also the exams and tests for the semester are coming along. So there are quite some things I have to do. But otherwise, very calm holidays this year. For my parents, I got an e-piano. I'm currently learning the piano since not yet a year. I learned it I learned it for a year just for myself, but I think now since some months, early summer, I actually take classes. Yeah, and I got now a nice beginner piano, so this is cool.
That's pretty neat. I actually asked my family to get mine back because I used to have one when I was 13 years old, about that, and I used to play a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. My parents should.
Did you take classes?
No. I was always just playing for myself, just the same as I do now with the guitar, you know. I asked them whether it was still somewhere around the house. It should be. So we'll see how that'll turn out. But I think it's not going to be anywhere nearly as fancy as your new one. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool one. I have a lot of fun already. Yes, otherwise, I forgot something really important. Not from me, but for planetary sciences, we have our moon rocks. Chang'e 5 did land. The land was successful. And we have new probes of the moon, new samples of the moon.
Yay.
Yeah. I'm not going into detail because I talked a lot about it in the last few episodes.
Yeah.
But it's done. We have done.
That's pretty cool. That's really, really cool.
Definitely. Yeah. And otherwise, nothing really new here. So therefore, I just hand it over to you. Is there something new happening at your life or at paleontology?
It's the final episode of the year. I don't want to I don't want things to get too technical or anything. Regarding personal life and personal projects, not much new. I mean, it's Christmas season. For me, it's the same as with you. I self-quarantined for a bit more than a week before Christmas. Then I only visited my closest relatives, and now I'm back home, once again self-quarantining as much as only possible. So yeah, work doesn't continue too much right now. I mean, still going through the literature, working on that, but in terms of practical things, not really.
Yeah, you're very lazy.
I'm always lazy, yeah, of course. I hate working.
Yeah, with that, I think we can transition into our main topic of today. So let's go into a small break and then come back with our main topic for today.
So then, let us start into, what's going to be kind of a review of the year 2020. 2020 in retrospect.
2 stars, never go again.
Exactly.
There were some good things this year.
Yeah, that's the thing. While seemingly everything went to hell this year, actually there were some rather good things, or even very good things, which happened in the case of both of us. And we just plan to today talk about the year, start in January, then work our way through to December, and try to maybe decide whether this year gets a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
That's a way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, the year started fairly normally. I mean, in January, nobody was talking about a virus, and it was the usual stress, the usual time of the year after New Year's Eve, New Year's Day had passed, when you need to start learning for exams, and the exams came.
Yeah.
So usual until that point.
Yeah, so for me, the start of the year was very busy, but I also really, really liked it. It was a very cool time. I had a lot of things to do for university exams and stuff, but especially for something that I want to talk mainly about, a special conference, which is the Lunar and Planetary Science Conference that is held in Houston. And at that time, I already worked, I think, a year or so in our planetary science department. And I've written an abstract to enter the conference. Now, this isn't, I mean, this was very special for me, but it isn't very special in that scenario because it doesn't mean that you go there. It's just then, yeah, we want to represent ourselves. We can only take a limited amount of people with us. I mean, it's in Houston, so just write anything and then we will see. And then I worked a lot on that. I really did. And my professor actually decided to take me with him and a bunch of other people. And I was so happy. It was so a good start of the year, you know. It was very busy, of course, but there were just so many good things happening from my life, like personally and in the university side. And I had a lot of fun. I really had a lot of fun. I remember one WhatsApp voice message that I sent someone like early February or something like that, where I was like, oh, it's so amazing, this year is going to be amazing, everything is so cool at the moment, and I was really hyped. So yeah, the university paid for anything. I booked on flight to Houston, where I was allowed to talk about the project I'm currently working on.
You were about to kill the minibar.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And eat a lot of fast food. That's what I also learned before. Yeah, so there was a lot of things that we tried to do before we booked our flights. I wanted to stay 1 week in Houston and see the whole conference. Met a lot of people, and then I actually booked a flight for my own money, with my own money, to New York, and I would have spent 1 week in New York additionally for myself, and then still the university would have paid me the flight back to Germany from New York. So that was amazing. I was so hyped for that. Yeah, and then that something happened in the news that you heard a lot about, that I just suddenly got very worried about. But people told me, yeah, don't freak out yet. Maybe it's nothing special.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
The naive schmuck that I am.
Oh no, nothing to worry about here. It was a difficult time. And then, yeah, 1 week before the conference, there was no conference anymore. And that was like the break point for this year.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine. It's I know you were pretty devastated, and understandably so. I mean, that's a great opportunity. Yeah, and I mean, this whole situation, it to me, in looking back, it all happened so sudden. I just remember that I didn't really...
Yeah.
I couldn't really truly grasp all of it until this virus had already reached Münster, truly. So I don't know why, but it completely overwhelmed me. I personally... I gotta be honest, I didn't really even take it too seriously in the beginning, which is pretty wrong.
I mean, it's understandable because there are a lot of there's so many stories in the past about virus outbreaks where people freak completely out, but yeah, you try to stay calm. And maybe I talked to my parents before, and they were like, "Do you really want to go to USA?" And I was like, "I don't see a problem here yet." And yeah, you just try to stay too calm. And with you, I don't mean you, but we tried to stay too calm at the beginning, and then it was really late that we realized, wait, there's something special about that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that usually we had some practical training in the lab of the paleontology department at our university around the time when the virus really hit Central Europe, hit Germany in particular. And I remember that during the practical training, news broke that the fossil fuel, that's the word I was missing, that the fossil fuel expedition wouldn't be taking place because of the virus.
So it's like an expedition from our university.
Exactly. It was another course. I took it because fossil fuels, it's still something bordering on paleontology, and I was basically taking all the courses involving all kinds of aspects of paleontology, something at least in the direction I would like to go later on. I mean, I wouldn't work with fossil fuels. That's just something I couldn't imagine for myself, let's put it that way. But yeah, that was when it really struck me that this would truly influence the next months, that this wouldn't be a temporary thing. I mean, at the same time, you gathered more knowledge about the severe consequences an infection could have. I mean, it's still not that it's the plague 2.0, but it's dangerous for many people. And that's at first it was kind of overwhelming, I think, this realization that this would truly be something we would have to take measures against, because it was so different from all these all these incidents the years and 1.5 decades before.
Yeah, so, I went from 100% going to the US to 1 week later staying at home. I stayed with a friend of mine back then because we had to, did not stay the whole days, but I did a lot of a friend of mine back then because we had to do something for the university. And we sat at her place. So we worked on stuff and listened to the radio. And, 1 week before, I planned to go to the US still. And now 1 week later, we sat there and listened to the radio where people told, now you're not able to travel out of the EU. Suddenly all the borders in the EU, so within the EU, are closed. And this is something very special because I've never ever in my life experienced closed borders within the EU. This is something that is not normal for us.
Yeah.
And it was so bizarre, so surreal, we just sat there and listened to the radio, and they talked about how everything is going to close. And just 1 week before, I still thought I could travel to the US. Just 1 week before. It's so fast.
Yeah. And I mean, that was really, there was this period for a few months where not much happened. I mean, from late February, I want to say, till the end of April, I was at home. I was sitting at home. I think you were at your parents' place for that time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But not much happened. I mean, I am not really too much of an outgoing person. I am not the guy who you would meet at parties all the time. I am more of a person. I like my peace. I like being around my close friends, but I'm not someone you would truly meet at any kind of party or something like that. So honestly, not much changed for me. I got up in the morning, I read the news, I have a lot of different hobbies, so I was keeping myself busy around the house, and honestly, it didn't really hit me too much. But in terms of the university, damn, not much, not at all.
I mean, my life was very different because I was now, I learned to live alone, very far from my parents, having my own life basically. And now I was just back again over 1 month with my parents, and
Mm.
it felt like I'm in school again.
Yeah.
It was so weird. I don't know. It just was back in some years ago. Um, yeah, and I didn't do anything, so university was closed and for a long time, and I just stayed with my parents here. Don't trying to meet anyone, and very weird, very slow. It
Yeah.
was like one from 100% to 0% doing nothing in just some weeks.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, I think that was a good decision to go to your parents for that time because I mean, I still had my girlfriend. We lived together, so I wasn't
Yeah,
completely alone, and that's really what you needed for your sanity in that time. I mean, even I was
yeah,
after 2 months, as I say, not really an outgoing person, not really the person who needs too much contact to other people, but in the end, after 2 months only seeing one person, it was tough.
yeah. I
But
I also thought about maybe living together with a close friend of mine for a short period of time, but things were you didn't really know what is going to happen in the next weeks or months. So my parents called me, and this was actually when I had also my birthday, which I had alone at my desk with a cake that my parents sent me, via post.
mm,
Um, so yeah, my parents then called me like 1 day before lockdown, and which was, if you compare it to other countries like Italy, actually very soft lockdown. But yeah, my parents called me. Were like, okay, we don't know if you're still able to come to us then, and so you would be alone. Do you want to be alone? I was like, yeah, maybe it's not the best decision. So they actually drove to my place so that I didn't have to use the train and get in contact with a lot of people.
mm,
They drove to my place, so it's like 1 day drive. Took them with me and all the stuff that I need for an unpredictable period of time, and yeah, it took me with them, and it was the best decision, of course. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, then at some point, university kind of started again with trying to do things online. You hadn't really any courses in this year, right?
no, not really. Most courses were I had in winter semester. In the summer, I didn't really. I only had one single course, so I didn't really come into contact with online lessons too much. And I couldn't really
Mm.
imagine it for myself as well. I struggle with staying focused.
Yeah,
That's
that's also a problem for me.
yeah. I
I mean,
mean, what other
you
choice did you have?
Yeah, the summer semester was still kind of special because I also had not really much courses, not really much classes. Um, there were actually two things that I had to be in a lab. So one lab exercise and one field trip. So they were, of course, postponed.
Hmm.
And then I had one class. No, that's not true. Two classes, um, which were online, but it was not like a live. It was just a live event. It was just videos that were pre-recorded,
Hmm.
and I liked it in some ways. So first of all, I'm very thankful for the professors and the staff that they really tried their best to somehow um, explain to us these topics online. They were also really concerned about that. They, our tectonics professor,
Hmm.
he was really concerned, and he wrote a lot to us if everything is working
Yeah,
and if it's possible for us to learn, or if he has to change anything.
I can imagine
Um,
that.
yeah, so that so for this summer semester, it was okay because
Hmm.
it was just this one class which I really had to learn new things, and the other class was something physical chemistry, which I did already take in the year before, but I didn't wrote the exam back then. So it was just you know going again through the stuff, and for that it was actually good because I could calculate anything on the exercises and then watch the video to see if it's correct or not. So this was actually kind of useful.
Yeah, plus, I
um
mean, many times lessons were recorded, as you stated before, and that was pretty advantageous because if you missed something the first time, you could just go back and watch it again.
yeah, the problem for me is um I am my nature is kind of very lazy, and I don't want to be lazy, so I always have to battle against myself to get up and do something about it. And I can do that. But the problem is now, if I stayed with my parents, everything was like I was, I don't know, 16 again. And now there was this videos that I could watch, but don't have to watch.
Mm,
So I just haven't watched them for a long period of time. The only thing I watched was the for the exam, um the recorded explanations for the exercises that we had to do. But also them I actually just watched very closely to the exam in the end.
yeah.
I wasn't It was difficult for me to catch up, to stay you know live with the content that we should learn.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same with me. I mean, I never really had too many online courses. Always only one at a time at max, and but still, during these courses, it's the same with me. I never really stay live with the content just because I don't have to, and I'm someone I
Yeah.
usually don't really pick up too much the first time around. In regarding topics I enjoy a lot, I do. But in general, I am someone I need to sit down and focus on the material at hand to study it, to learn for the exams. I'm not someone who can just listen to something and really understands it the first time around. It just doesn't work that way for me. So I just stick to going through the courses, going through the videos, and uh, studying it closely before the exam because it just doesn't work for me. I never really managed to stay up to date with everything.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you have with normal readings, normal courses, because you have to go there. You don't have the opportunity to go back, listen to it again. for instance. So it has its pros and cons, I think. For studying later on, it's definitely advantageous because, I mean, many people tend to say that students get lazy when they can just watch the readings later on, but honestly, I think the pros outweigh the cons because I am someone, I want to study these things, and for me, it only truly had pros in the end for my learning experience, you know.
Yeah. I mean, class is now a bit different, and I think we can talk about that when we get to the new semester. But back then, like in the summer semester, for me personally, it actually also had more pros than contra. Like the online, um, the online lectures, um, for this very specific courses that I still had to do. So this was kind of a special scenario for me, and things are now a bit different, but we will get there later. And also, this time was something that I've kind of learned about myself, maybe to get a bit more personal. Um, so I already talked about it. I kind of lazy of nature, and after school, I've decided to do like between school and then later university. I've decided to basically just take 1 year with no plans. Just you know, this is like the 1 year in your life where people don't really ask yourselves, what did you do in this year? So I kind of was like, yeah, let's just do nothing and see then what I can do. So for the first half year, maybe a bit less than half a year, but for the first time period, I did nothing. I wasn't like in England with my friends for 2 weeks, something like that. But in the end, I really did nothing. I just stayed at home. And normally, back then, I also wasn't that really social person. I had my friends and I liked meeting them, but I also didn't have to. It had to, I kind of was too lazy for having friends in the end. I just stayed at my computer and talked about with my friends at the computer. But in this half year, I learned that I hate being lazy. I absolutely hate it. I I I felt bad back then. I just was really feeling unwell back then. And I've kind of talked to myself, never ever in your life do nothing again. Go out there, experience new stuff, because this is what I need. I just can't do that as now. And in this half, and now back to 2020, it was kind of like back then. I just sit at home and now wasn't allowed to meet anyone. And then I saw that, well, being lazy for a long period of time is now, I still really hate it. It's bad for me. I feel bad about it. And also, I became a lot more social because now I had a lot of friends which I met on a basically daily basis, and now I just did only meet my parents. So I didn't thought about it at first, but I actually had problems with not meeting my friends, and I wasn't that social before, but I really changed. I really, really changed on in that way. So it was okay at the beginning, but in the end, I kind of got stressed out just with the situation because I felt like back then doing nothing, being lazy, meeting no one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really the thing. Many people found out whether they can deal with isolation or not, I think, over this time. I mean, I think things slowly then picked up at about May, the turn from April to May. Yeah. That was when, for me at least, things started to pick up again, because we do always have this. There is this dig site in the so-called Sauerland in Germany, here in northern Germany, and The LWL Museum of Natural History here in Münster, they dig there every year. And in that regard, I was pretty disappointed by the end as well, because there as well, people were discussing new ideas. There were plans in place to maybe even sleep close to the dig site for a couple of nights a week, to just basically stay there for longer, to have more time dedicated to pure digging work and less time to going there and driving home again every day, because it's a 1.5 hours drive from Münster, so 3 hours a day. This would be a lot of working time you could put into that instead of driving around. And I was really, really hyped, because just the thought of basically being there digging 2-3 days a week with as much time as possible.
This was one of the biggest wishes when I was a very little child.
Yeah, I mean,
going on a dig site, except for
Yeah.
dinosaurs.
Exactly. And I mean, while this dig site isn't exactly the Morrison Formation or the Hell Creek Formation, I mean, still, what we find there are dinosaur bones. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about the exact digging situation there, but I was really hyped. And of course, then in the end, this didn't work out. Yeah, and another plan had to be found, and this is what then was established by the beginning of May, because only one person from the museum would go there, and all the necessary steps were then done at the museum itself. We worked outside all the time. We had to wear masks, of course, while doing so. The museum reopened in May, at the beginning of May, so visitors could basically watch us work. Because the key point here was that it would be unresponsible to put 3 to 4 people into one car driving to the dig site for 1.5 hours and then drive back again 1.5 hours. Because then it would be guaranteed that if someone had the virus, you would exchange it with another person. So this alternative was created, that we would mostly work at the museum. Only one person would go to the dig site. And that was when I felt relieved, because some kind of daily routine set back in. I mean, I was only working 2 days a week, 6 to 8 hours each. So it wasn't truly too many days, but I was just happy to be back out again, to be working and doing something again, other than just reading and working at home.
Yeah, so for perspective, I mean, most of our viewers, I think, are still from Germany. But if not, we started with this soft lockdown. And
we do seem to have someone from Canada. I hope that this person sticks with us, but I don't know. I just saw it the other day.
Huh. Interesting. I have relatives there.
Huh.
And they do follow me on Twitter.
Maybe.
If hi. Otherwise, still hi. Nevertheless. So for that perspective, Germany, I think, had some numbers in early March above some 1,000 cases per day, which is difficult to put in, any relation, because we didn't know back then how many people actually did get infected. But very slow, very fast actually, case numbers dropped to like some hundreds per day. and that were low hundreds per day. And that was where things started to open again. The politicians made a decisions to kind of just put numbers low to a limit where things, where we can work with these numbers, and then go to back as normal as possible. This was also the time when I drove back to Münster, or my parents brought me back. And then things also started to get normal, kind of normal for me. I hadn't had any university, and students weren't allowed in the university, but I was working at the university, so I actually was allowed to go there.
So maybe to be more precise, you were employed. So
yeah, right.
That was the key point.
Yeah. And so I talked with my professor if that's okay, because the room I would be working on, I would be alone at. So we kind of said, yeah, it's okay. And also because there, for me, just going to the university would also lead to working for the university, just listening to lectures now was possible for me again, because I wasn't at home. I just wasn't at home, and that was kind of the key point for myself.
Yeah.
So I just went, early morning. I went to the university again, and just learned there. I just watched my lectures on a big display, on a beamer. I just put it on the wall and watched the lectures. I learned there. I worked there for my for the things I've just was doing at our Planetary Science Institute. So things started to get kind of normal again for me too. It was also again allowed to meet with more people. So I still kept things slow, but I've met with some people again. We've met again. And with some other people. And we kind of started learning together again, because we could now, join together and learn for our exams now. So things started to get more normal for me, too.
Yeah. I mean, it was still that, of course, when using public transportation, you had to wear a mask, but everything just...
Still,
what did I say?
Yeah, it just sounded like it was just back then. But
okay. No. Of course. You still had to wear a mask. But everything seemed to return a bit to normal or more normal, which is, once again, looking at numbers right now, pretty naive in hindsight. And I mean, it was predicted that we would hit another peak at late fall, I think. And I mean, I don't really want to go in too much into detail about the current situation, because it is pretty dramatic. I want to say at least more dramatic than before.
Yeah, we can talk about it at the end of the year.
Yeah, but I mean, that was the summer. In summer, I even planned and executed a little field trip, which, Thomas usually also wanted to attend, but more on that later. And it was still under precautions. We went there for, I think, 6 days. We rented a flat. We were completely on our own, so only the 3 of us, 2 other students, were with me, and we were on our own. We weren't really mixing with other people. We weren't going anywhere. We were getting to the flat. We were leaving, going to the field, returning straight into the flat. We were keeping things as simple as possible, and this field trip actually was pretty successful, because even more material turned up. It was really, really fun. As I said, the first field trip I've actually planned. It
was July, right?
It was late July, exactly.
Yeah, that's okay.
Late July until, I think, 1st of August something. And yeah, this first experience of planning something like that. I mean, it wasn't really too far away from home once again. 1.5 to 2 hours drive. This rhymed. I didn't intend it to rhyme, but there you go. Yeah, and honestly, it was great. And at that time, I was feeling great. I mean, it was still that you had to be careful what you were doing. But this was really a high point for me this year, because just this very exciting situation of being out there on your own for the first time, and then actually having success and actually finding something, I said there should be more, and I found more. Each time I went there, I found more. And
That's so cool.
yeah, that's pretty cool. And I'm pretty confident that there is going to be more, that these mountains are going to reveal some more secrets in their future. I think it's been pretty much a situation where people started to slowly just think that there was not much new to be discovered, but we did. And that's the great thing. That's the really great thing, because now we can point at that and say, hey, there is still something new to be discovered, and that there is still the opportunity for these mountains to remain productive for vertebrate paleontologists and other paleontologists and geologists as well.
Yeah. It's a cool field trip, and it's very nice that you've done it. And I don't know, it seems so, you've done this by yourself, and your friends, but you planned it. And this is so, I don't know, this is something I just ever wanted to do. And it sounds like so special that it doesn't sound like this would a bachelor student do. It sounds like someone would do for.
Oh yeah, that's because I'm the greatest human being on planet Earth.
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry that I forgot that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something which makes me pretty euphoric thinking back. I'm just pretty happy that I've done it, and I've been with two very fine people, two very dear friends, and I still think it's unfortunate that slave labor. No, but I was with two very magnificent human beings. They both really were enthusiastic all day long. One of them always had his camera at hand to document things. The other one was very enthusiastic, especially with collecting. And I mean, it's still unfortunate that you weren't able to come along, but we're going to go there together one day. But yeah, I appreciate your comments. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there something you want to add to?
No. You can now come to the reason why you, I don't know, unfortunately, fortunately couldn't join us. I mean, it was a pretty exciting reason.
Yeah. So I was in Swiss. But before I get to that, I had my exams in, I think, June. I also had the laboratory exercise, which was very interesting. We were only allowed 2 people in the lab. Actually was kind of fun now thinking back. Was kind of weird, but I had a lot of fun. Yeah, and I had my exams, which one was online, which was kind of interesting. And then the other one, this was a very big exam because it was physical chemistry and a lot of different, university classes. How do you call that? Like people that study chemistry, people that study physics, people that study...
people from different areas of research.
Yeah, did write this exam. So this was like many hundred people. And of course, you couldn't do that in university. So they have decided to do this at the event center of Münster. Like this whole place was covered with tables in specific, with like 2 meters in between them, and more. I think it was actually more than 2 meters. So that was very interesting. And this was also the exam that I was worried the most about. Because I don't want to sound cocky, but for most of my exams, I now had very good grades, which I didn't have in school, but now it was very different. I always had like very, very good grades. But this exam got me worried because this is like not a topic that I'm really fluent in. Like physics and chemistry, I talked about it, I think, in the first episode. Physics and chemistry were the 2 classes in school that I was the most bad at it. I was just really bad at it.
So a good choice for a course in university.
But I ended up actually kind of being interested in it, and I think it was useful for my further work, and I passed it.
Yeah,
which was nice. In the end, I didn't have to be that afraid. Learning was just the key to master this exam.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe one more example of people are often trying to make you panic. Not even in the sense that people are trying to negatively influence you, but I think that, many times people warned me from an exam. In the end, it turned out not to be too terrible, and that I wasn't the only person thinking that way. That it was something you could do if you just sat down, learned the stuff. And I think that it's possible. I really would like people to just be more optimistic, because it's hard. Often it's hard, but I think that in many ways people are maybe too afraid sometimes.
Yeah. I think you have to just learn how to learn for yourself.
Yeah.
So what I've learned was that I'm a quick learner, but I'm bad at learning for myself. So when I'm just sitting at home and trying to learn, I actually kind of have difficulties to do this.
Mm-hmm.
The best way I've learned is actually trying to, tell other people about it. Just trying to explain it to someone else. That's why I started learning in some very small groups, because what I did was just reading something and then just trying to explain it to somebody else. Yeah. And this was working really, really good for me, and I started learning really fast. I didn't have to learn like months actually for an exam. I could do that in a very short period of time, which I found very interesting. But back then I was afraid, because now learning in groups wasn't really that possible. I started, this sounds really stupid, but in the room in my university, I've projected like the files of the lecture onto the wall, and I've just gone through it like I would lecture someone. Like this was my lecture, and I wanted to tell students how to do this.
I used to do that. I used to do that when I made my A-level back in the day. I used to just get up and have these long monologues about that. I don't know, I stopped doing that in university, but actually it worked for me as well.
Yeah. And then for this exam for physical chemistry, I also now could learn with a friend of mine who also had to take it. And I just, over the last years, I got a good understanding of natural sciences, so that also helped to see like the larger picture of what I'm actually trying to do. I'm bad at learning things because I have to learn them. I always have to see a reason behind that. Why should I be interested in it? And now I saw connections to things that I already had learned, or to things that I could work on in the future, and that helped me a lot. So I got interested in kind of special parts.
Yeah, and that's maybe the most effective way to learn something, if you can truly see the sense in all of this. And that's what, at least to me, university has brought to me, because I was never good at physics. I didn't even attend chemistry, I only had biology as a key subject in my A level. No other natural sciences were truly included in that, and honestly, I never truly grasped the connections between different aspects of these subjects, if that makes any sense. And now it's you know what you're doing this for, and that helps you with understanding, I think, because now you can actually see why you have to do or understand certain things.
Yeah, there were some topics where, the lecturers are talking. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I need that. But then he just had this one keyword. I was like, wait, I read about that. Wait, this makes sense. I actually can use that. And then I've tried to comprehend that. So yeah, it wasn't. I'm now actually really happy that I've done this lecture, and then I've actually, you could choose between biology and physical chemistry. And I'm really good at biology. I was really good in biology in school, and I had like an A in the A level. And I did choose physical chemistry. Interesting decision. But in the end, I was really happy that I've done it. It was a good experience. Yeah, so I have talked about the exam, about the lab, and then July, I wanted to go to the field trip with you, but then out of the nowhere, our literally days. So we had the actually planned field trip to Swiss for our tectonic course lecture, and yeah, because of COVID, we didn't plan to go there. But just days before the actual the actual time period which we planned to go, he just out of the nowhere wrote an email where he was like, "Okay, it is possible again. It is quick, but we're going to do this. It would need more money, but we can take that from university. That's okay. We're going to do this if we want to." And of course we wanted to. So it ended up for us driving to Switzerland. We needed 3 buses, actually, if we could just fit in 2. But, we tried to, have spaces in between the people. I mean, I think with what we know now about the virus, if you're driving in a small bus, like not a large bus, like a small bus, hours, like 6 hours plus together, and space in between you, and then just a mask wouldn't help anything, I guess. But back then, this was like what we thought could work. So yeah, we traveled to Swiss. That's why I wasn't able to go with Dennis to his field trip. But Swiss was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. For myself, I actually was really often in the Alps. But this was still very special. First of all, we learned a lot of things. I learned really, really a lot of things. And the second thing here was that it was kind of the holidays that we all needed. Especially also our professor. It felt like everyone was opening up again. I mean, I don't want to sound like we just didn't take care of any measurements. We did, especially with people outside of our crew, Yeah, it was amazing. I think it was one of the best experiences this year. And then, after Swiss,
Switzerland.
maybe before Switzerland, yeah, sorry. Before I go back to you, because things I want to talk about August may take a while. So we came back, and maybe for a quick foreshadowing, I had an internship at the DLR, so the German Aerospace Center in Berlin.
Deutsche Luft- und Raumfahrtgesellschaft.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I was going from Switzerland to Berlin in like, I was going home, then I would stay at home 2 days, and then I would travel to Berlin. And this was very risky for me because numbers were low, but I was like, okay, I'm being together with a lot of people, traveling throughout the whole country, and then going to a complete different city in a complete different work environment. So I was worried about that. So in these 2 days I stayed at Münster, I self-isolated like 1 day and did a corona test, then COVID test. Back then it was possible for people that get back from holidays or trips that could, you could test free, for free. So I did that, and it was negative. So I actually said that I kind of needed, the test fast, and I didn't really think about it would work. But they were like, "Yeah, they see what I can do," and yeah, actually get back the test very early, the morning after basically, and I went to Berlin. But before I talk about Berlin, I guess let's talk about year August.
Yeah, so in August, as I've said before, the field trip took place. So end of July till August 1st was our field trip. And also during that time, all kinds of exams really had to be written, reports had to be finished. And that was really one thing which was pretty stressful for me personally, because we couldn't write all exams at the beginning of 2020 as we would usually have done. I mean, I'm always someone I like to... So you have two opportunities to write an exam. You have the first date and the second date, and I always like to write some on the first date and some on the second date, because then I have more time to manage how I learn for stuff. And so far, that's always been working pretty great. But this didn't work out because the second dates often lay directly in the time frame when the first true lockdown hit. And yeah, so exams had to take place at a later date, and this was basically from the end of June all the way until August, mid-August. And yeah, that was pretty hard because while you didn't really have to do too much at a time or too many things at once, you never truly got a break. It was always jumping from exam to exam to exam to report to exam to report. And this was pretty stressful. I mean, it's always, our professors are... Yeah, they would often tell us about how it was back in their day, that they had to write, 8 exams on one day, kind of like that. And yeah, that's the good part. We don't have to do that anymore, but
Yeah.
we have to write significantly more exams, I think. And this is what really stresses me out at times, that it's often, in general, it's often this, you always have to think of the next exam once the season has started, so to speak. And it was pretty extreme during August or during this summer, because you never truly got to catch a break. And at one point I had to write 3 reports at a time. 2 of them were at least kind of about paleontology, which was pretty nice. For me, a very fun topic, but it was a lot.
I just realized that we also had an exam together, right?
Yeah, we had our final exam together, which was
Yeah.
applied geosciences.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is in and of itself a pretty interesting field, but
Yeah.
not my type of cake.
Not also not my Not also not my also not my type. So
But before you
Yeah.
get to your next big point, how exactly did you experience exams this year?
It's about the one exam, the physical chemistry exam I talked about.
Yeah.
Then the online exam was really good. I don't know, it worked really well. I had a very good grade. It was like an open book close lecture, so you could use like your all your stuff, but therefore the questions, like it was very similar questions to the years before, but some of the questions had like additional parts to them where you had to think farther. That really worked good. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it wasn't lecture, an exam. Why do I say it was a lot of fun? But it wasn't good lecture. Let's put it that way. And then the applied geoscience exam. It worked. It wasn't a bad grade actually. It was actually a very good grade that I didn't have thought about first, but yeah. It is special for me because it was the last time that we could learn together.
Yeah. A pretty sad day in that regard, but overall, I think.
And of course, this was not in August. Just said the exam itself. I
But
just forgot it.
But did you experience the exams as stretched out as I did, like one after the other, or was it more clustered for you?
So for me, the point was that I really had not many exams this semester. There was one exam which I should have done like in March, but then came COVID, so it was postponed. It was like an online exam, but it just asked me things. And this was like in early May or June. And then I had like 2 exams in July, which I think was 1 week in between them, which is like not much if you think about all the other exam like weeks we had. That's kind of it. So there weren't really many exams for me, so it was actually really chill for me in that regard.
Until what you did in August.
Yeah. So I talk about Berlin, and you can talk about your field trips in August, right?
Yeah, in September actually. So this is going to line up pretty neatly.
Okay. So in August, I was in Berlin at the German Aerospace Center. And now thinking back of it, it was really amazing. I kind of actually got really
nostalgic.
Nostalgic, right? Nostalgic about it just some days before. It was a kind of strange feeling. That I've experienced there, but which I really liked. So it was in Berlin, but it was like in the inner city. It was in an outer city. There was a metro, which I think it needed like 1 hour into the inner city, but it was very close to the aerospace central. It was like 15 minutes to go by bike. Again, my parents drove from Bavaria to Münster and then with me to Berlin and back. I'm really, really thankful for my parents here. But I also really like to do that. They have fun with stuff like this. Just getting out, seeing Germany. I'm really thankful for them. Really, really. Yes, I was in Berlin. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it kind of was sad that I couldn't have experienced the normal work that they do because not many people work there. Most of them were in home office. But still, it was so amazing. I've learned a lot of things. I've mainly worked on Mars. Before I've only worked on the moon. It wasn't actually, at first, it wasn't a tectonic related subject, but in the end it kind of got tectonic related in some way again. Kind of mixture between tectonic and sedimentology. And I definitely will talk about that at a later podcast. It was really interesting again. And they were really happy with me, and I was really happy with them. It was a good relationship. And we worked together on the ExoMars project, so the new Mars rover from the European Space Agency. And yeah, this is what I'm currently writing my abstract about. Yeah, I actually don't want to go into that much detail at that point because I think I would do this in another podcast. But it was an amazing opportunity. I'm so happy that this was possible due to COVID because for a long period of time I was afraid I couldn't do it. In that case, I didn't even know how I could finish my bachelor this year. If this wasn't possible, I maybe had to do like bachelor 1 year longer just because of this internship, because it's necessary for our bachelor. And I'm just so happy that this worked, and it was amazing. I didn't see much of Berlin because I was outside of Berlin. I think it was like in the inner city for, I don't know, 3 times. And yeah, then in early September.
Yeah, but I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, just being at the DLR and for what you've told me, it's pretty amazing. I mean, for meeting these people alone, it's, I think, worth every second.
Yeah.
And you've even gotten a little project out of that, and I think that's pretty cool. And that's pretty important for the future. I mean, what is more important than meeting people, being in contact with someone?
Yeah.
Just
and also
networking is very essential.
A small spoiler, I'm actually allowed to work on that project in the future. We kind of discussed a bit about some possibilities, and I think we have an idea which could work, because I still have like my master project, which is a different type of work.
So if you want to listen to the details, you'll just have to pay for the extra episode over at I don't know where.
Yeah.
Pay to win.
Pay to listen.
Pay to listen. Yeah, no, but I mean, I think this has become a way too overused term, or overused sentence in our podcast, but maybe in a later episode.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah, and also living in Berlin. Only which was just for a month. Kind of cool. Seeing different cities.
Wouldn't be for me, I think. I'm not the Berlin type of guy, I think.
I know what you mean, but I mean, I'm also not maybe like the specific stereotype you're thinking about. But it was first of all like in an outer part of the city, and then I really love the inner part of the city where like the government is sitting, because everything is so old, but like important old. You just walk by this very beautiful, old, and important buildings that you
just
know
historical,
of. Yeah, and everything is kind of cleaned up very nicely. So it just everything you look at looks important.
Yeah, I mean, who am I to judge? When I went to Berlin, I basically went straight to the Museum of Natural History. Went look at the dinosaurs there, and at the, in general, I went at the whole exhibition,
Yeah.
of course, but yeah, of course, definitely, I was attracted the most to the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
But
I was there too.
yeah,
I used a weekend
I
for that.
didn't see much of Berlin otherwise. So who am I to judge, really? But we were pretty short on time. That was the problem. And we didn't really have much time. And I mean, I wanted to stop in Berlin basically for the Natural History Museum. So that was the priority. Everything else was secondary because I had never seen the Giraffatitan / Brachiosaurus skeleton before.
I was there before with my parents some years before when I was small, but now things are kind of different because I would be there alone and I would live there for like a month.
Yeah, that's always a completely different situation. Also,
Yeah,
no,
okay. So back from Berlin to Münster, what did you experience in September and like this kind of, I think, some overlapping time?
Yeah, I mean, August, this late August was when the first field trips, not self-organized, but this time field trips from the university took place. They were postponed indefinitely at first. They were supposed to take place way earlier than that, but in the end, late August until end of the September was when we went on these trips. And these are trips which are essential for you to receive your bachelor's degree. So you have to take part in these. There were basically other options. You could write reports where you had to research from the literature certain details about certain topics. That was an opportunity. That was a possibility, but only for those who plan to start with their master's degree, their master's courses this year. And since I am only going to start my master's degree next year, this wasn't an option. So I had to go on these field trips, which were one to the Harz mountains, for 5 days, and the other one was to Italy, to the Piedmont Basin, which was a bit longer, about a week, and this was at a time when Italy wasn't a particularly endangered area in terms of COVID anymore. Then later in September we had to go on another excursion to the Sauerland, not related to the dig site I talked about earlier, which is also in the Sauerland, but unrelated. So 3 excursions over 2 months, and they were that was pretty tough as well, because once again it was just boom boom boom, trip after trip. I mean, they were spaced apart reasonably, but after these final field trips and after the final report I had to write for one of those, I felt like I was done for. So this was the end of a...
Can imagine that.
Yeah, this was the end of a 4-month period of constantly working on studying for exams, working on reports, having my own little excursion, which was not for anything university related, directly, indirectly, because of course what we found is going to be subject of my bachelor thesis. But yeah, by the end of September, early October, I was done. I was very happy to just get some time off, and yeah, after that, I didn't really do too much. Some projects came along, the podcast came along. We finally decided to start recording ourselves talking about nerdy stuff we like to have discussions about. And I'm pretty happy we did.
And let's talk about that later, like in this podcast today, like our experiences. Yeah.
But that's I just wanted to say that's pretty much where my year ends, because I can just sum the rest of the year up by saying 2 other projects have started, so 2 other papers I'm currently working on with other people. And this whole RockyTerrain project finally took off, or restarted really putting content up. So not much more.
So if you want to learn more about his stuff, listen to this podcast.
Then back to you.
Yeah, so for me, September and August. No, wait, September. Wait, October is the English word for that. Yeah, it's the same in German nearly. So for these 2, sorry, for these 2 months, also bachelor thesis was like my main project. It was a pretty cool period of time because I was a lot in university, and also with some of my other friends who also wrote their bachelor thesis. So we kind of grew together strongly in that period of time, shared experiences, I guess. I mean, we were there on weekends together. So, yeah, a lot of work, but also just doing a lot with these guys. And we also were like on a very short holiday trip in Germany for some days, which I really needed, because at some point in writing my bachelor thesis, I was digging a hole for myself, basically. I was just maybe too focused at that point. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't bad, but I wasn't just really able to work correctly.
Yeah, you just get tunnel vision.
Yeah. So just having I actually wanted to be with them 2 days and then go back, but I ended up staying with them 5 days. But it was perfect because I could focus again and trying to put things in perspective, like seeing them from outside. And this really helped me because after that, things worked nicely. I mean, there were still some points where you're really stressed and afraid, but in the end it worked out, I think, really nicely. And so in this 2 months, bachelor thesis was the main part of my life. And then came our podcast, which we can now talk about, and also the new semester, and also context numbers in Germany to rise again. Now thinking back of it, what a surprise, because this was what our experts did tell us in spring, that we can go throughout the summer kind of normally, but if we don't try to get close to 0, it would just start rising again. And this is what we did see, Yeah. And so from staying in university every day and seeing your friends literally every day, kinda, it went back to staying at home, having online lectures, and now I have a lot of online lectures. They are, besides of one, not pre-recorded but live. And now things are more problematic for me because I'm just I'm not as focused at home. I need to be at university to be focused. But at home I'm just unfocused. And currently, I don't have the feeling that I'm staying up to date, and I don't have the feeling that I've learned that much this year. And it wasn't all bad, of course. Not some of the some of the lectures actually are really good, as best as they could be in the current scenario. And I know that for some people, they're actually really positive about that. But for me, I just have to see what the exams now will be in the next months and try to learn as much as possible and see how this works out. But for me, university wise, everything I'm going to say about that is it isn't really good for myself. I'm not suited for that, and now I'm seeing a lot more cons than in the summer, like in the spring. The scenario is different now, and now I'm not as good as in the spring with these online exams, online lectures.
I mean, to be fair, you didn't sound too enthusiastic about it when you talked about these exams earlier. Already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am not really in the same situation because it's not that much stuff. I don't have as many subjects as you do. At the moment, I only have to regularly attend one subject with one reading and one exercise. And this exercise, honestly, I don't really know what its future is going to be because you have to work on microscopes. It's a microscopy course, and I see this being problematic because, I mean, you cannot work on a microscope without attending exercises. It just can't be done. But on the other hand, looking at the current situation, I don't really know how this is going to progress going forward. I mean, everything has been cancelled until, I think, January 12th. But
yeah, bad.
Yeah.
I think we want to say the same here. I don't think that this is a very realistic date.
Absolutely, but then again, you have to question yourself, when are you going to write the exam? Because it was usually planned for the end of January, and we are already pretty much lagging behind the schedule. We haven't even started with the true main part. It's still more basics of microscopy, and it's difficult. So, but I mean, maybe to slowly drift over into summary of this year, we cannot go around the whole COVID topic. So, of course, trying to ignore away this whole topic would be ludicrous and pretty much impossible. And one wouldn't want to ignore it because it has been shaping so much of this year, because it has been so terrible for so many people. And I mean, even when we're talking about, just everyday life, about everything that happened this year in grander terms, in terms of turning points in our university lives, everything was basically at some point influenced by COVID.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, but then again, I would still say it was, I think I can say for the both of us that it was still not an unsuccessful year. I mean,
definitely not.
Yeah, just thinking about new contacts, just thinking about that we still could somehow manage to get through the courses, to get everything done we wanted to get done. And I think one cannot look at everything without a critical perspective, because especially when it comes down to field trips and courses where you have to actively be in university, it's debatable whether everything of that was always truly necessary, or whether there wouldn't have been a truly other way, I think. But I think that's a very, very difficult discussion to have.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in our field, I mean, geology is centered around nature. This subject would be nothing without going out into the field and studying landscapes, studying rock sections. And that's why I think it's so difficult, or more difficult, for students of this particular field of research to find other ways to get around practical training, like field trips.
Especially for like the new students that came this year. I think they have it really difficult to be in the situation in the first year.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful that this happened like in my first semester, because I could think that maybe the future would have looked different for me. Maybe I wasn't really able to connect with the subject if, everything was so difficult.
Yeah, field work is what usually pretty much drags you in, I think. That's what gets you to connect to this topic. That's what gets you to connect to geosciences, the landscapes, looking at what these rocks can actually tell you, learning that these are not stale objects, but dynamic objects being actively formed and reformed by all these kinds of different processes going on Earth all the time. Like we always say, like looking at an archive. And I think without this practical training in the field, it's very hard to truly convey that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to study geology, you think about being at special places in the nature.
Yeah. I just want to make the point that I am still very torn on whether maybe some things would not have been necessary, because of course every one of us has to somehow play his or her part in reducing COVID infection numbers. And I mean, for me, it was all risk minimization was always involved, like with our field trip, like with never going anywhere but to the flat and to the quarries, basically. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I'm also trying to figure out, if this year for me personally is a thumbs up or thumbs down. But so first of all, it's difficult to know, like, what would this year look like if it was normal. I'm just thinking about all the things that I have planned, starting with the conference in Houston, which is like the conference. This is the planetary science conference there is. There are other, but this is like the main large conference. So I'm just thinking about all these things over the year that could have happened. It's difficult to like compare, but in the end, I think given the situation, I've basically done the best I could. Like all the opportunities I had. Zoom did open a lot of opportunities. I'm in a lot of contact like with people from the US. I was able to do a conference, or maybe not conference, but at a larger telecon of like the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter in August, when I was in Berlin talking about my staff, and they invited us to be at the Tectonic Telecon that is like every 2 weeks. So just being, I mean, I guess this would be online also with no COVID, but like all these things that led to this, I don't know if this would have been possible without. And now like I'm in contact with all these, for me, famous scientists that I've read a lot of papers for my bachelor thesis and just for interest. And now I'm talking to them about my problems and about the things that I've learned and asking them questions, and they ask me questions, and it's very cool. And thinking about all of this, like the small opportunities or large opportunities that have occurred also kinda as a result of the current situation. And also about the things that I've experienced in the end. The trip to Swiss that was very special for us, or the this short holiday while doing my bachelor thesis, and all the people that I've connected to this year. These were special things because these were not normal, and so they are feeling stronger or kind of more special than I would have felt like if it was a normal year.
Yeah, I mean, you tend to, I think, appreciate whatever happened this year as a kind of a little extra. Like even connecting to people. I mean, that's the thing with these online conferences. The good thing is, while yeah, you can't attend them physically, you could attend meetings you couldn't attend otherwise because they take place somewhere you can't go without funding from a university, for instance. And that's it's cherry picking the positives right now, but I think at least some positive things happened this year because of different circumstances. And while it's an overall pretty horrible situation, yeah, I think honestly for me personally this year was not too bad.
Yeah, for me too. So if I should now decide thumbs up or thumbs down, I actually would say that given the current situation, I think that I've personally done the best that is possible for me, like in the situation. And while I don't want to say that this year was good, like overall good, I'm just talking about my personal experiences because many people had tragic, situations this year. And so I don't mean the year in general, but for me personally, I would say I've done the best out of the situation, and therefore I would say kind of thumbs up given the current situation. I mean, trying to say if the current situation is good is of course a thumbs down, but with the with the situation in the background given, I would say kind of thumbs up, if that makes sense.
I couldn't agree with you more. And to be honest, I also don't really know whether we would actually have gotten through with the RockyTerrain podcast, because let's be honest, because I don't know, there was this stretch of time where we had less to do than we would have otherwise. I mean, yes, of course, that came back around in the summer when everything had to be done at once, but yeah, overall, there was this time when we kept discussing how do we want to approach this, and when we basically came to terms with each other to try a podcast. And while we had this fixed plan to start something in terms of SciComm, in terms of podcasting, YouTube, whatever, I don't really know whether we would have 6 episodes online by the end of 2020 if we wouldn't have had this additional time.
Yeah, I would think so too. Or I mean, our plan was first to do like YouTube videos, and it's still our plan to do at some point videos. But the problem is that we are not really experienced in that field, but we're also very perfectionistic. So we don't like to launch unfinished stuff, and this was very difficult to it was very difficult for us, and then also this just takes a lot of time. And while a podcast still needs a lot of time, of course, but it's less. It consumes less time than making an, in our eyes, good YouTube video like.
Yeah. I mean, we are, for the most part, having discussions in front of the microphone we would also have otherwise. And I think this especially came through when we reviewed Dante's Peak, because this was pretty much the most open discussion we ever had. And this is what I would tend to wish where this is going, us having open discussions.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I mean, while of course it still takes research, it still takes time to prepare something for the podcast, it's nowhere near what we would envision us doing, because there are plans for us to create YouTube videos. At least there are certain formats, certain channel types we like, and certain ideas we have, and we are actively thinking about how we could work something out we would be satisfied with and what people would probably like to watch. But I mean, at least I would hope so. But still, it's way easier, I think, for us as persons to just sit down and have a conversation. It's just less than working up these videos we have in mind. I mean, things are going to change. I am going to gear up my technology because I'm going to upgrade to a real PC. I'm
finally.
After a long time of struggling and fighting with myself, I have decided to upgrade to get a good PC, to spend the money, because I see it as an investment in the future. Also in terms of university, because many projects today involve things which require processing of data, and these are all things my laptop just couldn't manage. Just being more independent from the computers at the university, at the Natural History Museum, I only see benefits, and we'll see. Maybe by then, when we both have more capabilities in terms of working on material, maybe by then, maybe next year, we'll see at the next review at the 21-22 boundary. But yeah, maybe we'll have something up by the end of next year. Who knows?
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, I think this kind of concludes our recap of 2020. What a year.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Like a boundary, like a geological boundary.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I would say that's it for 2020. Let's finish 2020 with that podcast.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the new year, especially for the podcast, to see how it develops. And with that, have a nice new year. Have a nice, like the last days of holidays. I hope you had a very nice Christmas. And with that, to a better year, hopefully better year 2021, which we can look forward to.
Absolutely. Stay safe, guys.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the RockyTerrain podcast. If you enjoyed listening to us, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Everything addressed in this podcast reflects our own opinion. You can contact us at 4.5gainthemaking@gmail.com. That is 4.5gainthemaking@gmail.com. All music used is from Kevin MacLeod and was downloaded from filmmusic.io under the Creative Commons license. That is heavy interlude for intro and outro, and home bass groove for intermission.